I know it's exciting.
That's why I put it on, yeah.
Is the mayor coming up to this one, do we know?
I am not sure.
Is it 10 yet?
Are we recording yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we start then?
I'm good.
Okay,
Looks like 10 to me.
it looks like 10 to me too. So we will call the Economic Development meeting to order. And we will start with Randy.
So I've drafted an RFP for the, we've called it in the past, an event toolkit, media kit. And I've just taken a couple of the RFPs from other jurisdictions, and I don't know if you want to include our budget amount in the RFP. Some do, some don't. Our insurance provisions, some do, some don't. And then I just have some outlined, the purpose, the background, the key issues, guiding principles, what the deliverable is, proposal documents, that type of thing, and then a criteria outline for the selection process. Like I said, again, this is just a mix of different proposals. And just wanted your input before we go out for an RFP.
My thought on it was that, to me, this proposal was beyond the scope of the toolkit that we were wanting done. Because the toolkit is just a matter of someone taking the information that we've already gathered and putting it in a different format, making it pretty, so to speak, making it marketable and putting it on our website. A very simple task that I know the Public Works has a really small roster. In addition to their small works roster, they have a really small roster. And that they can just call people up and ask them.
Right, we can, based on the dollar amount of this proposal, we don't even have to solicit. We have to solicit for 3 bids, and it could be written, it can be verbal. They don't have to be on the vendor roster.
They don't have to be on the vendor roster or anything. So, to me, this was, I like your glasses.
Oh, thanks.
No. To me, what this RFP describes may be a position that we would like to have filled within the city, but I think it's beyond the scope of what we need for this one task.
Okay.
That was my thought.
Okay.
And if they don't have to be on any roster, I would call, for myself, for the toolkit, maybe like My Printing Services, local, they do graphic work, and could they do the graphic works for us? There's Outlook Writing and Design in Belfair. I mean, there are a few people that I know that I've worked with in the past that does that type of thing. And if we can just give them a call, it seems like that's easier than this, because for $3,500, if you look at this, no one is gonna.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was a pretty large RFP for the money, but thinking back to the wayfinding fiasco, I'm all for putting it out there so you don't hear.
And I can limited.
If nobody responds,
right,
then I think you'd be okay to go to your small works roster.
Well, is there a roster? You're saying there's nobody on our roster that we would call? Or
No, she's saying we don't have to call off a roster.
Yeah, we don't. It's $3,500. It's under the threshold.
So we can call anybody? We don't
Yep.
have to call. That would be
They
the
just
wrong
request
thing to
3.
do. I
They just
agree with
request
Jeff.
3.
We have to put it out to
Right.
let people know that this is available. It doesn't have to be this that they fill
Right.
out. I agree with that. Although this doesn't look bad, it's, I think, a little daunting. Like
It
when you
is,
talk
and
about
then there's some
insurance
things
and
in
stuff.
here that probably,
But-
I just threw in there just to give you guys an idea, but the number thing that I was thinking of is if it's on page 2, 7 and 8. And then 7, 8, and 9 is the meat of what I thought it was, is basically, how do I say, here's our printed materials, we want you to make it pretty. So I thought, well, maybe it'd be easier if we just say, okay, you need to work closely with the clerk's office to develop the kit, and I can word that to say, which is already prepared and needs to be beautified or made,
Right.
so I can clear that up a little bit. And then what's the other one? Again, work with us with the clerk's office and event organizers. I don't know if they're interested in going out, because again, we have a list of all of our events, if they want to talk to them about it, that's
Well, we have
another.
to tell them what we want them to do, 'cause so
Right.
they're gonna do the, whatever we tell them, or the minimum.
Because all we're having them do is this toolkit. We're not having them
Coordinate.
coordinate or do anything like that. This is just, because when we get to 8, it says work closely with the clerk's office and event organizers to gather information on local tour and assets event that will be included in print. Because we're not asking them to do any of that. We're just asking them to put together the event toolkit so that an event organizer has one place to go on our website. This is everything you need to know to do business, to make the event happen.
Okay.
It's like we're giving them the raw material and they're coming out with the end product.
Right.
And
Do we
I,
have examples of what we want them to look like? Like you said something on the City of Seattle site, or Visit Seattle? There was something
Well,
downloadable
if
that
you-
you liked?
Yeah, I have downloaded, I have looked
I
at
mean, could
several
we
different
give them an
cities.
example? We want something like this as the end product, so they know what we're looking for.
Well, there are different samples, and I don't know that.
you don't want to steer them into one concept, because,
You want them to be creative.
and I guess my thought for number 8,
We may not like
in
what they
working
have,
with the
though.
event organizers, is more of a calendar thing, and maybe we're not ready for the calendar to say, hey, these are historically, and what type of events they can communicate with the event organizers to see what type of events, because based on the type of their event is gonna trigger XYZ.
Oh,
That was my thought process, but again, I can clear that a little bit more to say, work with event organizers to determine the multiple types of events or something like that, to be a little bit clearer. And then also, most event organizers already, I mean, they've already put in the public event application, they already know when they're gonna hold it, so that's a given. But maybe this person has an in of somebody that says, hey, we always hold this event, and we've never rose to this level, you know, how can we be a part of it type of thing, and
whatever.
No.
In my mind, when we asked for the event toolkit, when we went through LTAC for that, it was to make one place on the website where event organizers could go and find out exactly what they needed to do to put on their event in Port Orchard, and to provide them a list of assets such as what caterers are available and, you know, the local garbage person and local Santa cans, so that they don't have to do all of that research. It's just all right there.
So you're
And-
talking about a web portal or a website or a web page at the very minimum that we would host.
Yes, that's what it is.
So it's almost web development that we're
well,
coming
no,
up
the
with.
development would be ours, it's just, they would develop the documents or pictures or links
Right.
that would go onto our website.
Okay, the records.
Right.
Correct. That there will be something on the website, this, if you're an event organizer, you go here, and perhaps have pictures of the map, so that we can eliminate some of the issues that the Taste of Port Orchard had this year, or Hogfest had. I mean, this is information that we have. That's what this is designed for. And it's designed for like the Chris Craft people to go there and get a list of people they can work with, because one of the things that's brought this to my attention is that Chris Craft brings in a lot of people to the marina, but they used King County caterers last year, you know, and that didn't, it seemed like if we had provided the information. So it's really, and we've got all the information together, we've got the data. It's just a matter of compiling it. So this just seemed well beyond
Right.
that scope. Not that I don't think all these things don't need to be done, but that
Right.
wasn't this
Well,
particular
I
project.
think page 2 is the most important thing, because I think we need to describe to them what we're expecting. I mean, I like people to be creative, but if you don't tell them what you're expecting, you may not like what they come up with.
So number 7, is there anything specifically, and I can, you know, take out, I have to look and see, but, you know, 1 through 6, and we can just hone in on number 7 to say, you know, we're looking for the development of a press kit that includes, but not limited to, and I just included a fact sheet, collateral materials to show, I mean, I can take that out and say, okay, we want a calendar,
Yeah, I think you should add the word calendar, map, asset list, checklist, procedures, and forms.
locations.
Right.
I'm sorry, assets lists.
I have that, the LTAC thing that described exactly what the toolkit was gonna be. And that's probably what should be on it.
Oh, that's right. Include, okay, so a map of the Port Orchard, include properties, which we have, public event application, which I have, the port's guidelines, which I think we now have, list of facilities, okay, assets, including the parks, demographics of the multiple day, okay. So I can just take that, list it, bullet point it, make 7 number 1, and that's what you're looking for, and then number 8, I don't know if we want to just keep that out or to have, maybe it's an option, you know.
Or maybe it's a bullet point, may work with event organizers,
Yeah.
whatever.
It's not, yeah, okay,
May. May work.
okay. And then, what's number 9?
Also may.
And then I don't know, I just put that down after we received them,
Yes, no, I think that one's important.
9 and 10, wait, no, excuse me, 9 and 11.
Yeah, they need to have a feedback that they.
Mm.
And then number 10, obviously we'll take that one out. Let me just come up here real quick.
So my thoughts as I'm sitting here thinking on this, for 3,500, it's, to me, more likely than not, that this might be taken on, I don't know, I could be completely wrong, because like a college student that's just graduated from a marketing thing, and they're looking to get their feet wet into this area, and they may not have such stringent insurance in place. It's pretty harsh levels of coverage for a $3,500 work product.
It is, yeah, I've looked at other ones and it's like
When we
40,000.
compare the price of $3,500 versus a $2 million aggregate for a commercial general liability, you know, I don't see where somebody that's just starting out, I don't want to eliminate that type of person that might just be the go-getter you're looking for. I think that's what you mentioned earlier. So I don't know how you can reconcile that if not, but.
Well, we can take the contract terms out of the RFP process, and then we can just do what we've done historically, or recently, is, once the contract has been, offered to the recipient, we would enter into a professional services contract. We would have all of our standard language. It'll be reviewed by the attorney, and if for some reason that contractor says, hey, I can't meet X, Y, Z, you'll get a memo from the attorney, the city's insurer, saying this is why we would opt against it, but ultimately it's up to the council to assess the liability. And that's where we would go.
I think
And for $3,500,
you know, hold harmless agreement probably would work. I don't know about the
oh, maybe instead of, yeah, there you go.
thresholds for the insurance.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, I can take that out. Now, what about the criteria for selection? Do you want anything outlined, or do you, I mean, some RFPs, there's clear indication how the process is gonna be. There's the lowest responsible bid, or, you know, here's the criteria. We can include that out, and then you guys can develop later the criteria. That's just, like I said, some have it in the RFPs, some don't.
I don't have a problem with it, but I'm wondering about the relevance of cost, since we're telling them, oh, I guess they might come in under, or, unless it's a flat fee, but I'm thinking higher level. I want to make sure that all the graphic designers in the area know about this project, either through an ad or something on the website. Because that's the complaint that we hear, is that local people say they didn't know it was available.
Yeah, I mean, this will go out for an RFP. It'll be in the ad in the legal section like we do all the other RFPs.
Can we say
It'll be on our
preference for
website.
people based locally? We can't say that, can we?
I don't think so.
That
You
could
may
that could
put
be a
in-
tie-breaking decision, or if it's close enough.
Okay, yeah.
An internal.
And,
I mean, do we want people in Idaho looking to do this type of work, or?
it's all gonna be done on the internet, a lot of it.
Okay, so I'll remove the criteria selection, and you guys can decide that later after the RFPs come in. I'll remove the contract terms. That can be determined later. Let's see. then I'll also remove the work product. That's part of the professional services contract that we'll probably have to incorporate, and that's just the contract language term. And then we'll have sealed bids.
Well, we're not, are they including cost or, okay.
Right? Yeah. Do you want, because we're gonna tell them up front it's $3,500 and somebody can come in.
maximum, yeah.
Yeah, we just want sealed bids. We don't want them to
Okay.
email it, just because I think
Oh,
it's clear
okay.
that, yeah, they should, or fax it or anything like that, should be
Okay.
sealed bids.
Oh, okay.
In my opinion, just
Okay.
because
I have no.
if somebody were to email it and then,
It could be subject to a request.
absolutely, yeah, if they're not sealed, they
Okay.
can be subject to the public records
Yeah.
request.
And I have no opinion on that whatsoever. so
That's a good
fine.
idea. Because it's they're competitive
Well, and that, we'd get
information.
fax,
Yeah.
we'd get emails,
Right,
and we want them to provide 6 sets, so that way everybody has the opportunity to
To
have,
look at
feel the product and product in hand, so. Okay. Okay, so I think,
I mean, I don't want Patty Graffhope bitching about how she didn't know that we had this project available. And they could have done it, blah, blah,
You know,
blah.
I
well, we're
agree
going
with-
through the same process that we do for all the other public work,
Right.
all
No,
the
but
other
that-
processes.
I think where Fred's going is that may not be adequate.
No,
That the
yeah.
same process, that's a good way to say it, well, we've done it the same way, but I've heard the same things, Fred.
Yeah.
I didn't get notified. How come I didn't get notified?
Actually, one thing that you have done, which is good, is you could just email this, whatever the announcement to the interested
The press
parties
release.
email. Yeah. Put the press release and just send it to the email list.
I could do that, but.
In addition to whatever else you normally do, just as an FYI.
I mean, I can select a handful of people or whoever I think, but I think you're still gonna get the same thing is, oh, why did the clerk admit me out of it? You know what I mean? You're still gonna have
Yeah,
the
I
whole
would-
same
Yeah, I would-
process.
do that.
I would
And I
actually
don't-
encourage the elected officials to, if you know somebody, to share this with
Yeah,
them
I mean,
rather
it'll be
than
on our
putting it on
website, I'll send a
staff.
press
That's a
release,
better
it'll
way
be
to do it.
advertised
Well,
in the
actually,
paper twice.
yeah, I can help distribute the press release.
And that's my only
Okay.
comment is, you know, I can send them out, but I'm gonna forget somebody and it's not gonna be intentional, it's just gonna be.
Well, it's their
Right,
fault if
right,
they're
right.
not on our
It's an agenda
list.
item on the council.
And
then,
there's also going to
you
be
know, it's another
2 people
documented-
submits, okay. I mean,
Yeah, they may not think it worth their while or something. Yeah.
exactly.
I just want them to know that it's there, and if they don't apply for it, that's their fault.
And then I'll change the title of it because it says print electronic marketing. I realize it should be the design of the print and marketing because I don't want them to think that
Right.
They're printing
we're,
it.
yeah, we want them to print this all out and provide thumb drives and that type of stuff. So, okay. So I'll copy this, put that in the bullets points. I think I have good direction now. Not that I didn't before, but you know. And so my plan is to have it advertised this Friday, and it'll go for, let's see, I put it on here.
It's going to be the Independent.
Yeah, it'll go into the city's official newspaper, so it'll go into the POI. I'll publish it on the 15th and the 29th, which is this Friday and the 29th, and then it'll close June 5th.
And then.
And
hopefully
that way,
it'll
that
come-
Monday for public properties, you guys can review the bid. Won't be able to get it on the first meeting in June, but you guys will have some time to
Right.
deliberate and then
Right.
get it on the end meeting in June.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you'll put it on the website Friday, or the release. will be
As
out
soon as the
Friday.
RFP's done, and we have the ad developed for POI, we put it on the website right then and
Great,
there.
okay.
So we don't hold it up for the
Good,
publication.
okay.
Right, and then you'll put it on our Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, our next item is the April comprehensive plan hearings. I just wondered if the group wanted any discussion after we'd had those 2 meetings. Any follow-up that we wanted to have on the economic development piece or anything?
And do you mind if I?
Yeah, no,
excuse?
that's great. Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you.
Because how it felt to me is we had the first overview meeting, and then we had the second meeting where we had a lot of input, a lot of back and forth, but we didn't have a follow-up to that. And that's the part where we could really get into the discussion. And so that piece, it just kind of felt not complete to me. And I was just wondering if anyone had anything here they wanted to bring forward, or if Nick had heard anything back, had got any more input from that.
Well, I wouldn't say we've gotten more input, but we've, aside from the email that you sent, But Scott has sort of gone through the recording, and he's recorded the comments that we did receive from the public and what the concerns were, and we're working then to just address those into the draft comp plan. And then what we'd like to do is he's pulled all of the elements into one document and kind of removed some of the formatting so that it's easy to edit. But we're trying to assemble this into a more final draft version of those first 4 chapters.
Because what I feel happens at meetings is we'll have a discussion and someone will say something. And as an example, Councilman Clausen questioned in one of the goals, I think under economic development, there was a phrase that said leverage the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. And he didn't feel we should be limited to that. Where, I don't know if you guys remember that. I do,
Yeah,
and
I
I don't
thought
remember.
it was more related to the military.
Whatever it
development
was.
of skier, but yeah, I
What-
remember the comment.
Right.
Something
And,
similar.
and so what happens is nobody else talks about that. And at the time, the mayor and Nick said, well, we thought that came from KETA. You know, we thought that's where that came from. And so there's no more discussion. And now that may, because it wasn't appropriate at that time, but now that piece may be gone, where I think it's important that we leverage our proximity to the military, because I think when military people retire, quit the military, I think that's a great workforce for us. And how do we leverage that? How do we keep them here? I mean, I don't see that as, I just felt there are things like that that happen that all of a sudden, because somebody says it, becomes what we're going to do when there really hasn't been a dialogue. It really hasn't been vetted.
Well, I think I'd go a step back in that it sounds like we're collating or we're recording the comments. And in some documents, probably not, we don't have the scope here, but in some documents, you have a list of your comments that you get from public or officials, and you have an official response. I probably think of an EIS type of document,
My
which is
take-
probably not what we're doing.
And my takeaway was that you were going to consolidate, to the extent possible, those that were basically
Presence.
a lot of consensus around the table, and I saw a lot of that.
Yeah.
And I assumed that some of these more tangible comments would still make a draft comment
Yeah,
list or something, and we were going to have another meeting to go, is this it? Is this what we want?
Yeah, and actually, Scott had sent me his write-up on this, and the way that it was formatted, I wanted to talk to him about revising it because it wasn't clear that the comments were coming from the public. He was discussing the issue that was raised, but it wasn't clear if it was a comment from the
source,
public
yeah.
or a comment from the council, and I didn't want certain things that were being asked to be presented as if they could have been coming from the council versus from a private citizen or organization.
Right.
So I think that, yeah, that's something that we can put on our to-do list. He's got a month until he graduates, and I think he's finishing his thesis, so he told me
Oh,
he's not
he's
available
busy.
for the next 30 days for the most
Yeah.
part. But once he's done, I can have him write that up.
And then maybe, if it's possible, to separate those that were, obviously, there was a consensus in those, that there still needs to possibly be more discussion, and then forward, and just bring that to work study. I think, and we can just quickly get through, yeah, we all kind of are on board with this, or the majority is, and these, we can vet a little bit more. Would
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure everybody was comfortable.
Okay.
And understood where we were going, and that the discussion piece to me was kind of missing. But I can deal with that, that's okay. But we also want to remember, if we look at that RFP that Brandy had just done, it was quite extensive. But if in our comp plan, tourism is in fact going to be an important element, then maybe we need to think about something like this. And if tourism is not going to be an important economic driver for us, then maybe we need to state that in the comp plan. We want all of these things to be in unison. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but yeah.
So it sounds like we'll continue working on refining the kind of summary of the meeting and the comments, and then provide responses as well, and bring it to work study for discussion to verify that we have the right
The
marching
right
orders.
direction, yeah.
Okay, that's
That's
reasonable.
because I felt we missed the opportunity to qualify some of the input we heard. I think we heard from a lot of people, but I was concerned that the demographic skewed really older. I was disappointed that we didn't have any young families in the audience for the first one. And I don't know how we can get them. I was concerned that we're talking about a 20-year time frame. And what we heard were from people who did not want us to make the city more walkable because they couldn't walk themselves.
Yeah.
And that's what really worried me, because I thought, well, I understand what they're saying, and it's not like we're putting all our eggs to make it pedestrian friendly, but
I
we're looking
took
for
some of
the.
those comments in the context that maybe some of the members didn't fully understand that the comp plan really is talking about future growth.
Yeah.
And not necessarily,
No.
I mean, although there's elements, not necessarily revitalizing, a 90-year-old street. This is about where we're gonna put future homes, future jobs, and what do we want that to look like when we do start putting those in. But I took away some of the same thoughts you did. And the other thing I took away is there's a huge divide in this city between traditional downtown and McCormick's Woods. There's a huge divide. I was really shocked at the animosity towards those people out of McCormick Woods. They always shock at Gig Harbor, and I'm like, well, technically I live in McCormick's, and you mustn't see me at Walmart, because that's where I do the majority of my shopping. So, but
But I agree with you.
there's a
There
huge
is
divide there, and there's a huge
we need to-
misconception about McCormick Woods in general, because there's 3 brand new developments out there that are part of McCormick Woods, and those are all blue-collar, working-class families. There's no elitism out there at all. And that concerned me, that perhaps we need to work on a little bit better communication and understanding of what's really going on in McCormick Woods, not just the 20-year-old development with the golf course.
I've
You know, I agree.
noticed that too.
Did you notice that?
I've noticed that, and it's getting to be doorbell season time again if you're running, and it really becomes obvious because, we need to mend fences and bring ourselves closer together, because we're all in this together, but I don't, and I'm working on it, and we all can work on it, but I sure do feel that,
Yeah.
both sides. I mean, the sides out there say some things about those,
Oh, yeah.
the rest of us, and vice versa, so. Just have an area to work
I heard
on.
that there was, I don't know if I'd say it's a divide, but they wanted to specify whether they were in the old McCormick or the Ridge, and people there consider them different neighborhoods, not necessarily pejoratively, but just they wanted to be clear about which neighborhood they lived in. Like us, it's those of us in downtown, we figure, oh, that's all McCormick. Well, no, there's the Ridge, and it's like, okay.
I personally just consider it, 20-year-old housing and newer housing,
Yeah,
and it's all
okay.
the same,
Well, that's how I.
because
kinda
I go
look
by
at it, too.
geographical name.
Yeah.
There's the Sydney
Yes.
corridor, the Bethel corridor, McCormick Woods.
Yeah.
Right.
I use the trails and the parks or whatever, but
I hadn't realized there's that divide there, because where I live, you have bigger houses and smaller houses, and you can, I consider it the downtown area,
yeah.
but there is, there is a different conception
Yeah.
in parts of it out there.
And as
So
we-
I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, I think we're gonna see even more of that if and when we annex our UGA to the east.
Yeah.
East Port Orchard area, or, yeah.
If you think of between Bethel and Jackson, if and when any of that annexes in, I think you're going to see another division between downtown and McCormick's and that area.
EPO.
Yeah.
So that was the big takeaway for me, that and, the same old 20-year question, what are we gonna do with downtown? Which is, let's set on that, but, I was kind of shocked at the division.
So you're going to, Scott's gonna summarize everything, bring it back to
Yeah,
a work
it's
study.
mostly
and-
done, it's just,
Yeah.
we need to revise the way that it's presented.
And we'll just, at a work study, and we'll just say, yeah, we're in agreement with that. and
Yeah,
move
I'll aim
forward.
for the June work study,
Okay.
if possible. I know I've got a couple of other big issues on that meeting tentatively, so we'll just see how it
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah, that's great, okay. And then, Elle, do you want to talk about my sidewalk?
Yeah, so we've gotten a number of responses in the questions that were already posted. We've run into a couple of potholes though. So the website went down on Friday. It was completely inaccessible.
My sidewalk website.
My sidewalk, the whole site went down, and they are still working on fully recovering. So as of this morning, they had a Port Orchard page, but it was missing all of our responses, all of our pictures, everything. So we're working with them, trying to get that back up and looking as it should. So that is where we are at currently with My Sidewalk. We're trying to work with them and trying to make this work.
How many
Yeah.
topics are there? Like, were there
There's
7
3
still?
right
or-
now.
Okay.
There are 3 comp plan topics, and there are 4 questions posed by the Public Works Department asking about backflow
Oh, yeah,
devices
backflow
and
devices.
testing and various.
It's a hot topic.
I was just concerned that the first thing you look at, it's like backflow devices, and you're like, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's 3 of them, and they seem to be the same question.
And there were
Or 4 of them.
a lot of issues. It's an initiative, which is essentially their word for a survey, and depending on, I can't even tell what the pattern is, but for some people, it shows up on the left-hand side of the screen saying you have to click on My Initiatives or Initiatives in order to get to the survey, and in some cases, the questions just show up on the home
I
screen.
haven't been to this.
I haven't
Yeah.
been
So,
either, and I
yeah.
don't think I'm too fond of the term initiative. It makes it almost sound like it's a ballot measure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
It's
and
just that's not a good term
Yeah.
to get input
No,
from.
not,
No.
It makes it sound like it's a done deal and we made up our mind and put it on the I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
can we customize that through the company? I mean,
They are not very willing to work with us on customization. I have been struggling with them quite a bit with that. So they're the initiatives are one of the major problems that we've been having, and I've been asking for a solution, and they have been rather unwilling to help us come up
Yes.
with some other.
so far, I say we're not that pleased because right when it launched, and I don't know if we shared this
They
with you, but they
changed
they
their
switched it
names.
from the old platform to this new platform, and we had never heard that this was going to happen, and so the
Can we
new
get out the
platform doesn't
contract?
have the same functionality. I
Can
mean,
we
it's
opt out of the contract because of
we may need to look into that. I mean, I'm trying to work with them and see if it's going to
That
do
was
what we
my
need it to
question
do.
too. Is there any other options for us? Is there any other games out there? I mean, any other?
Yeah, I think there's things that we can look at that are more survey-based, but right now I've got, because we were planning on using this for parks, and it's apparent that the
Right.
parks questions we want to ask, we can't get the same type of imagery and other things loaded into the questions. And so we're going to go back to a Google platform and try to do it using the Google survey tool, which is a much more basic platform, but at least we can get it out there and get the input that we need. But yeah, we need to talk to them, and I know that
maybe
Elle's
run
been
it by
struggling with
Carol,
it for the last
contract,
3
and
weeks.
if it's not kicking off this way, and I wasn't pleased with the change in,
Yeah.
change in structure right after we signed the contract. And
Right.
Yeah.
They should have disclosed that.
Good.
That
Yeah.
didn't happen in a 2-week window. They were
No.
working on that
We knew
when
that
they
was
took it
coming.
as. For all we know, we were the last entity to put them over the scales to sell the business or whatever, merge it or whatever they were doing. And
I don't even know that's that. I think they rebranded themselves.
I would
Yeah.
look to get out of it. It's not sounding like it's getting off to a good start to me. And generally, those things just continue to go downhill.
Particularly if it's something as easy as changing the word initiative. You know, you should be able to do something that simple.
Yeah. If you were getting, you know, if you bought it for 7 out of 10 points, and you were getting the 7 that you wanted the way that you wanted, you can live without the other 3 without customizing or whatever. That's one thing. And we have that with My Staffing Pro online job application. We're getting about 70-80% of what we wanted. That's what we were paying for. But the other stuff, it's still a little cumbersome, and we'll run it out for the 3-year contract and take another look at that. But if this is starting off wrong, my experience is going to be this is going to be wrong for the duration.
I'm really troubled by the fact that they don't have the site fully running and functional again. The fact that it's been down since at least Friday morning is worrisome to
Now,
me.
you worked with
Mind Mixer.
Mind
Mind
Mixer.
Mixer at your other jurisdiction.
I
And you
did.
had good,
We had no problems. I don't know why they would fix something that wasn't broken.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So we had good references. We had someone who was experienced with the product, and we
Yeah.
did everything we needed to, but they've made a change, and I agree with you. That should have been disclosed, that they were making a major platform adjustment, yeah.
Our contract was with Mind Mixer, or whatever the
Yeah.
company
It was
is.
Social
So maybe-
Momentum, which is the parent
Okay.
company, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
they
Is it
sort of
still
switched the product on us.
Yeah.
Even their Facebook page doesn't have a lot of engagement. They have posts from like Riverside, California, and they don't look bad. I was actually hoping that they had a Facebook component that could interact with existing groups on Facebook. So people could like comment somewhere else and you could harvest it back in what we're trying to get through.
Yeah, and we have spoken about that, and they just don't have that
Yeah, 'cause
functionality.
There was some discussion of one of the topics, generate a lot of comments on Facebook, but that didn't get to my sidewalk. And I don't know how to get it back there, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was
Yeah.
the empty lot or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, we're gonna continue
Okay.
to evaluate and, maybe start leaning on them a little bit.
So your sidewalk has potholes, huh?
Tripping hazards.
Tripping hazards, tree
It has-
lawn
has some
cracks.
tree-
Well, that's
Tree
too
trees
bad,
that you cut
because
down.
when,
Yeah.
Roots.
when you venture into something like that, you want your
Yeah.
first experience to be positive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nick, do you want to talk about our pretty little map?
Yeah, well, and I copied the report I handed out to the finance committee.
Oh, okay.
I didn't find it until this morning. I had sent it to Alan, but I couldn't figure out where it was saved, and so I just finally downloaded it off of our webpage and printed a copy of a copy. Anyway, I briefed the finance committee about 2 weeks ago, I guess, on what's happening in our department, and we're busy to say the least. We're as busy as we've ever been since I've been here, and talking to Stephanie and Ellen, this goes back to the peak a few years ago when, we were full speed ahead. Building permits year to date, at least as of 2 weeks ago, were up 14% compared to last year. Land use permits are up 300%, but some of those are minor applications, obviously. But we do have 2 current actions pending before the hearing examiner, and it sounds like 2 more that are going to be coming in that need to go to the hearing examiner, which that's a very staff-intensive process. We currently don't have a hearing examiner clerk. It's going to fall to the planners to actually clerk the meeting and prepare all the materials for it. And so things are piling up on desks, and I think for building right now, we're at 6 weeks on plan review, which is about as long as we've been. I think it says 23 building permit applications under review right now, and even if those people paid for expedited plan review, or we would send it to our consultant, they still have to go through land use review, and there's so much in the way of land use permits right now, it's not easy for us to turn those around real quickly right now. And so, and this is typically the time of year where people are trying to get their projects lined up for summer. But if these levels are maintained, I don't see any way around needing some additional full-time.
Can you back up and tell me more about the hearing examiner? Because currently, the developer pays for the fee of the hearing examiner. But
Correct.
that's only the hearing examiner and not any of the support staff.
No, there's 2 permits. So if you apply for a shoreline permit, for instance, you pay the $2,500 hearing examiner deposit, which you get refunded the difference or billed for the remainder if his hours go over or under. And then you pay the shoreline permit fee, which is like $800 or $1,200. And that covers the staff review time, preparing the staff reports,
Keeping
et
the
cetera.
record.
Yeah, keeping records and files and whatnot.
Okay, because you mentioned a need for a hearing examiner clerk.
Yeah, and so somebody essentially has to be in the meeting and basically record all the comments, put together the final documents for a signature, put together the legal record, keep recordings, basically be the, Janine or Rihanna in the back room
And that's
recording
not
everything.
covered by the fee for the hearing examiner.
Well, it's covered by the fee, but we don't have the staff for it right now, without pulling somebody out of the office and having them come to those meetings. So I think in last year's budget, I had requested a planning assistant, and that would have been an assistant to the planning department. It was going to be a part-time position that would have that one of the roles would have been hearing examiner clerk, and that would be assembling the record, maintaining the files for those types of things. And we just previously, Ellen had taken care of that, but we also had additional planners, and we're down an FTE from where we
Yeah, I'm
were
sorry that your staff has to
previously.
fill in that. I would
Yeah.
have hoped that the hearing examiner would have their own.
Well, and we could potentially
Assistant.
contract for it, but that's gonna,
That-
And I don't know how that would work, because those are our records that he'd be managing, but I could certainly inquire and see if that's a possibility.
I don't personally think it's gonna slow down. We're always about a year behind Seattle. Seattle's a 23% increase in property values. They only have about a 2-month supply of houses, which is about 2 months lower than they want. Even Kitsap County experienced 6% growth in home. I think the market is perfect for a massive boom in new starts, because you get into that tipping point between renting and buying. And I think Port Orchard, as we heard, the comp plan, is a perfect place for, first-time homes, similar to the Ridge, those types of areas. Puget Sound is geared, the shipyard is geared for another 2,000 to 3,000 employees. They're moving another carrier over. The projected work out of the shipyard is steady, if not increasing, for the next decade. Just everything that I'm reading is we're poised for maybe not explosive, but I think significant increase in building that we haven't seen since pre-08, and it's all coming out of the woodwork.
I tend to agree with you. I think that's probably what's happening, and you're reluctant to add full-time staff unless you're sure that you're going to be able to maintain that staff. And so, potentially as part of next year's budget, what I'll do is I'll put in for a full-time temporary position that can be made permanent if things maintain themselves. But I also need to evaluate what is the most pressing need right now, because we're working on code revisions, we're working on comp planning. We talked about having a long-range planner that dealt with specifically those types of issues and fixing the code, versus short-range planning, which is working on current permitting and building permit review and that sort of thing. And I see that there are needs for short-range and long-range tasks in the office, and how to balance that, I'm not sure what the best answer is right now.
I agree. I just don't want the city to have a reputation as not being very responsive in quick, getting these permits turned around quickly. We don't want builders to go elsewhere. I don't, anyways. I mean, there's some that are going to pose any kind of development, but if they want to build here, they can build here. It's zoned to build here, and we need to accommodate the comp plan growth. That's what the zoning's for and everything else. And if they're building appropriate buildings in the appropriate zones, then we need to do everything we can to make sure that they get quick turnarounds. We don't want a reputation as an entity that's hard to deal with, or can't get anything done, or a lot of red tape or whatever, because they'll go elsewhere. They have a lot of choices right now. They can go out in the county if they want. South County, from Gorst to Gig Harbor, is a ripe area for development right now. And the cost is right. Property is coming available. So,
Well, Nick and I, we had to do some, because of medical leave, we had to do some quick maneuvering, about 6-8 months ago.
Yeah.
To get permits, keep inspections and permits moving forward. We may have to come back to you again with some kind of short-term contract or something, some contract help to get us through until we
That's
can.
what I was gonna say. What you have to do is sit down and actually prioritize the work that the department has to do, and get your staff to meet that. And if it is a matter of getting contract help in, until you can actually do, like you said, a temporary, a full-time temporary, whatever that's going to look like. But I happen to agree with Jeff, is we don't want a 2 or 3 month delay when people want to get something done. And if we're generating
Extra
that
fees.
business,
Extra
the
fees.
fees should offset what.
At least to a degree, yeah, that's what I'm
Right.
and the other thing that we need to weigh the scale here is we need to move quickly on our impact fees.
Yes.
That's
yes.
exactly
Because
where I was.
we're missing out on money.
Right.
And if we can offset the impact fees with quick turnaround, I think that'll help offset some of the development that may go to the county that's still at the lowest on the whole list of the 40 entities that we looked at. I don't think they're gonna raise their impact fees. I haven't heard anything, I don't know about you guys. But we need to really take a hard look at that dollar amount on the impact fee, where we wanna set it, and get that in place as soon as possible. At the same time, we're making it as easy as possible to develop, and that'll, because time is money. If they're gonna mess around with the county for 6 months, or pay the $2,000 impact fee per unit and get it done in 2 months, you know, that's 4 months of turnaround. That might offset that impact fee for that developer, because time is money, and that's just kind of my thought on it.
I also want to, this is just my personal position, but I also want to be careful when we look at our densities and when we look at the development that's happening. I'm not real in favor of those 3,600 square foot lots. I just don't see those homes as marketable.
They're building them that way everywhere. You can go down to Gig Harbor off of Burnham Drive, and go left or right, go past the YMCA. It's quadrant-esque, but they're different developers, and they're all very small lots.
And maybe
what
it's
you're paying
the
for is whether
quality.
you're having granite or laminate
Right.
in the kitchen.
And maybe it's quality of, but
Maybe it's
and that could be. I see all of a sudden by our densities, we've eliminated the Rambler, that type of
Yeah.
home,
It's not a very cost-effective home to build anyways.
Yeah.
Building up is always cheaper than building
Unless it's a
out.
compact Rambler. I'm more concerned about our road standards in that we've let people, I mean, I like the cul-de-sacs from, people being able to talk to each other, but given the number of cars that people really have, I think that's the problem that we didn't address in some of the subdivisions.
No, exactly.
I
and
mean, I
that's
wish
what
we could tell
happens
them they
when-
could only have 2 cars per household, but until we can do that,
Right,
they're
we have
parking
to
on
think
their
of the other
lawns.
things that go with this,
And that's why we're doing the walkable and all
Right.
of that, and the trails,
Right.
and, leave your car at home and
Yeah.
take your bike down to the store or whatever.
right.
Or if we
Those are
had
the other elements.
alley requirements, or it's like, because I think we've waived some of that, and I think it's been to the detriment of some of the neighborhoods.
Yeah, well, I think, in tying this back to workload, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of code updates that we're working on, and we mostly are trying to fix the processes that we have in place to, reduce the city's liability of getting appealed for decisions on land use cases. I'm not planning at this point on touching zoning, landscape requirements, parking requirements, any of those sections. We don't have the resources to deal with that, and especially as things are heating up, our ability to do those projects, even addressing the sign code, which I know we've heard about repeatedly, is really difficult to get to when you're looking at 6 weeks on
Right,
permit.
it's not as high a priority as,
Yeah.
it's not letting the permits drift
Yeah.
even further into the.
I absolutely agree, and, and if somebody wants to build something that's not to code, or, they can always ask for a variance, and we can look at it at that time.
Well, but variances are very difficult to approve. It's not, if you want to build something that's not to code, we can't just give a variance because they want to do something. There has to be a logistical hardship, either related to the topography or the characteristics of the lot, not just your sign. For instance, our sign regulations were designed before we had Bethel, and so Walmart signs are bigger than what we allow. But that, for any big box store to go in, or any strip mall, we don't have sign regulations that allow enough area to support that type of visibility, and so they can't just come and ask for a variance and say your regulations are out of date. They have to come in and have you change the regulations. And so that's really the problem that we're having, and a lot of the calls that we get are, we want to put up a sign and it's, sorry, this is what our code says right now, and there's not a lot we can do about it. There is a variance process, but these are the criteria, and it's a very high hurdle for you to clear.
Would it help if we had and I threw this out facetiously before, a moratorium on code enforcement, but what if we had a relaxation? Would that help any, or would that just make it worse? like a 6 month, you know.
Well, you're gonna
Who's
get,
gonna order that, Fred?
you're
I
gonna,
won't order that we relax our
No,
laws and codes.
what I'm thinking is
Okay.
we very specifically say in terms of signs, we're going to a 6 months trial, experimental, relaxed period where you can propose.
I don't think that's not what you're getting right now though is our code enforcement person is retiring on June 20th.
And it's not.
And we're
yeah.
hiring a new person, and so there's going to be a lull in code enforcement purely because we're bringing somebody
Right,
up to
yeah.
speed. But I think in the summer months, that's when you see signs in the right of way becoming, a huge issue with people putting these temporary signs all over the place.
And those are the things that you don't want to relax. Those are the
Okay.
hazards to public safety, the things that
Okay.
could be blocking intersection views to see oncoming traffic.
That
those
wasn't,
kinds of
yeah,
things.
that's not necessarily what I was talking about variance. I was talking about if the code says you can go 2 stories here and they want to go 3 stories because it pencils out,
Okay.
that might be something we would want to look at. Whatever, that's just another
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Or if the code says you got to have X amount of trees in the front and they, for whatever reason, they need to do less because they want to put an extra driver, whatever. Those are the kinds of variances that talk, not sandwich boards and signs. I'm talking about, what's going to help drive that actual development of that piece of property.
And when you sit down and prioritize the work that the department has to do, I would put the impact fee ordinance right at the top.
Well, and to touch on that, we met on Wednesday with the mayor and the attorney and Mark, and we are bringing the 6-year tip back to council for work study next week because there's 2 revisions we think are needed to that based on our discussions internally, and so we want to get council's opinion on which version goes forward for adoption. We have determined through the attorney that we're going to just do an adoption by resolution to comply with PSRC and do the comp plan as part of the annual cycle, and depending on whether citizen amendments come in or not, that could be done as early as August or later in the year. But if we amend the comp plan now for the TIP, we can't amend it for citizen applications. So we have to wait until June 15th to figure out whether citizen applications have come in or not. But we are planning on bringing the concurrency and traffic impact fee ordinances forward to the June work study. They are drafted. I've sent my final revision to the attorney for a final review, and those can be adopted, but the impact fee for traffic won't be able to take effect until the comp plan is amended. So I think the ordinance would say, if it was approved, it's going to say effective upon adoption of the 6-year transportation plan as an element of the city's comprehensive plan. And so whenever that final amendment happens, then the impact fee can go into effect, or you could just set it for the first of the year is when it begins. But at least the ordinance will be in place, and the structure of the fees and the calculations and the process and the appeals and everything that goes with it will be updated. And you could choose to pass the new impact fee ordinance and not adopt traffic impact fees as well. You could just keep the school and the parks in the framework of the new ordinance, and then amend that ordinance in the future to do traffic once the comp plan is amended. So there's a couple of ways to do it.
Is there any way, though, to start collecting impact fees if the council votes for it? I sign it earlier than next year, realistically?
The only way to do it would be to just decide not to do annual comp plan amendments for citizens and to amend the comp plan as soon as possible, which requires a planning commission review and recommendation on the tip, and then council can adopt the ordinance 60 days after. But at this
Let's
point,
look at the calendar, we're really not gonna save
the
much
deadline.
time.
That's just what I was
Yeah.
gonna
You
say.
know, when you
You're not-
look at it down
yeah.
the
let's see if
line,
the
we're-
citizen amendments come in,
In
number
June.
1, and number 2, if the amendments that come in are not realistic or are not something that council even wants to consider, you don't have to move those forward for consideration. You could only move the traffic tip forward and be done with it. So that's where we're at on that project. But anyway, the good news is the ordinance is drafted, and when we bring the tip forward next week for work study, I think we may even bring the draft ordinances forward so that you have a month to review them, and we'll put them on the website so that citizens can see what they say. And then we'll have the discussion in June, and then potential adoption of the ordinance at the end of June, if all goes according to plan.
Do you want to talk about our map?
Sure.
I think
This
our
is
map
this
is-
is it's a continuously updating map. There's a couple of projects that have come in recently that aren't on here, but for the most part, these are things that we've had meetings on within the last year. The one project, there's 2 projects we've gotten in. One of them a pre-application meeting for moving the St. Vincent de Paul thrift store to the intersection of Bethel and Mitchell. I think Mitchell is the one that forks off, so it would be right at the fork in the road. So they've done a pre-app there.
building there
Bethel
now?
and
No, they'd be building a new building.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There, at that, there's a optometrist there right now.
In that little sliver there?
I think there's,
Are they down further on the Lundberg property?
It's right behind Lincoln. So if
It's across from Lincoln. Okay, it's a different, it's
Car
right
wash
here.
side?
the
No.
ophthalmologist is right here.
So where the old
Right
mobile
here.
park was?
No, it's, no.
Okay, the mobile home park
Do you know if
and the
you're
road to Dell's,
Yeah.
it's on the
opposite side of Dell's?
Oh, okay, so it's on the
Right across
opposite.
from Dell's.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
what,
and then the
what
reason,
we old timers know
So
as
it's
the
off of
Lundberg
Mitchell?
property.
Okay.
yeah, it's on Bethel at Mitchell. And so, anyway, the reason that they're looking at moving is because Bay Ford is looking at expanding and building a new building on the waterfront site and acquiring that property next door. And so we've been in contact with them concerning that, and we're having a pre-application meeting soon. And once an application, on any of these, once an application has been filed, make sure that as council members you're not talking about this, because you're not allowed to talk about projects that you would potentially hear an appeal on.
Right.
At least that's what the attorney has provided me. The other one, number 34 on Sydney, near Sedgwick, we've just gotten a pre-application meeting there for what looks like a restaurant or drive-through restaurant. I'm not sure whether it's going to be a fast food or what they have in mind, but there is a proposal there across the street from the Kruger property, which is submitted for 60,000 square feet of commercial.
Is that the lot around is that the corner where the apartments are?
Yeah, it's just
So
on
it's the empty corner,
it's just to the north
Southwest
of
corner?
Burger King, and then there's a
Oh.
couple of other shops right there.
northwest corner.
It's where the big pile of dirt was for a while.
Yeah, in front of the
Great big,
apartments.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's so there's a couple of things happening on Sydney. I know at least one certainly seems to be motivated by getting their project permitted before the impact fees go into effect, and so I think potentially some of the surge in activity in the department is actually people trying to get in front of impact fees. And the thing about the impact fee ordinance is that it's written so that the fee is due at the time you pick up your building permit. It's not the time you submit your building permit, it's once review is done and you actually pull your building permit, then you pay your impact fee based on the calculation and the fee in place at that time. And so these people actually have to pick up their building permits, and then building permits only remain active if you take action on them, and so they would have to start working the site or making improvements in order for those permits to stay valid. So that means those projects are going to have to happen if the impact fees are going to be avoided. So I would definitely expect to see something at this site on Sydney between now and the next. Well, I guess in the next couple of months, because they seem like they really want to get to work. Other than that, it's mostly just single-family building permits. We've got quite a few of those under review. We've got people that, we're telling them 6 weeks, and I think the word is sort of out there. We've got people coming in advance of like, for instance, we have a final plat that's going to be coming to council in 2 weeks, and that builder is getting plans reviewed so that he can pull permits, and he wants to get ahead of he wants to get in line for permit review now, so that when he gets his final plat, he can pull more permits and start building more houses, and we're working with them to facilitate that, but people certainly have to plan ahead a little bit more because of the long review time.
You know, this map you gave us?
Yeah.
I appreciate all that. I just want the UGA boundaries. It would come, I was just trying to,
Is there a clickable version where we could get like a sentence more of information for
Not
Jen?
yet, but
Okay.
SmartGov is going to be set up with this so that we have the portal online, and that's the other thing that we've got it in our contract to launch that, but with staff resources, I don't know if we're gonna be able to make that happen this year or not, but the idea is that once these permits are filed, it'll show up on a map and you can click and get whatever information. You'll get the same packet that we see of preliminary
that would be
information. It'll have a site drawing, it'll have
So
who's
there won't
applying
be any
for
more
it.
guessing, and the neighbors
Yep.
talking about what's going in there, you'll be able to.
If something's happening,
If
it'll
it's
be in
a
the
public
system.
record, it'll
Yeah.
pop right up.
Unless it's just a rumor, and then it's just a rumor.
Right,
because,
it
you
is a
know,
rumor, and there's no official notification of it.
Yeah.
When you mentioned the fact that the Salvation Army store, or St. Vincent, whatever it
St.
is, was
Vincent.
moving, and Titus was looking at expanding, is all of that compliant with our DOD?
Yeah, they're in the wing, and so it is an allowed use in the DOD. There are, it is a shoreline area, so they have to do a shoreline permit, which requires a hearing examiner review, and that appeals of the hearing examiner, of course, go to council. But at this point, it seems like what they're proposing probably works with a couple of minor adjustments to their site plan to conform to the setbacks for the shoreline. And of course, concurrently, they're doing their cleanup, and they already have permits to do their cleanup this summer. And so I need to work out where the boundary between their summer project for this summer is and where their new application is, because they're going to have to restore what they disturbed, removing the contaminated soils this summer, and whether they restore it to conform to the new plan or to the old plan or to the existing lot. I don't know what their plan is, and I do know that they're hoping to build a building by the end of this year, which is a tall order. I think considering the 3 to 4 months for permitting a shoreline permit at the hearing examiner, that's going to put them pretty close to the rainy season on groundbreaking.
And an FYI, excuse me, we did get some communications from Bruce Titus, and about that he was afraid, or he thought that maybe he wasn't being listened to as much, or that the city was not, participating in his project, or is happy about his project, or something. So we wrote a letter to him, and the letter basically it says, as you work to expand your business, we're talking about Bruce, the city of Port Orchard will extend you the same high level of service that we strive for every interaction. I have expressed to my department heads the importance of this project, and they have assured me they will work diligently to provide excellent service and assistance in navigating the process. Please keep in mind that this is a unique project with unique challenges. If there's anything I can do to help you navigate the process or overcome any challenges you face, please let me know. That being said, in the first paragraph, we say that we appreciate you and we appreciate what you've done for the city. We're going to go through the meeting process, and I think we haven't even had an unofficial.
We're meeting with them, depending on what happens with my jury duty, I think in about a week and a half.
Right. And that's pretty quickly to get.
Well, you're Pierce County too,
Yeah.
so that's different, okay.
And so that'll be the meeting where you'll mention a few things that they've already identified that may be not according to Hoyle, so to speak.
Yeah, and Mark, Stephanie, and I have
setbacks
sat
and-
down, and we kind of are all on the same page on what the potential issues are, and we want to make this,
As streamlined as possible, but on the other hand, we don't want to, he'll get no special attention, or special dispensation for
I think
any.
that Jersey
in Pierce County.
of voir dire, just during voir dire, if the cops arrested him, he must have done it.
But yeah,
There's
it'll
certainly
move
ways
over.
to
That
That's
sort
short
of will
of
be
contempt.
Yeah,
in the empty,
Yeah.
or I mean.
I'm not going to make any comments of that
So
sort.
there are ways that you can probably make yourself less.
Good.
Yeah, no, I know.
Glad to hear it. On that letter. What's, I see here number 10 is a Walmart expansion. I thought they were done.
Well, no, they were looking at adding a 4,000 square foot liquor store onto the building. It sounds like they may have pulled back on doing that project. I'm not sure. There were a number of challenges with the site because they had fire easements around the building for fire access, and they're going to have to do a lot of property revisions, and then there were some things that they actually didn't finish on their initial permit that we said, hey, and by the way, you still haven't finished these issues, and they basically, I think, are saying, nah, we're going to hold off on this for now. So, but it may still come forward. I'm not really sure.
Well, just one more comment I'd like to make. The reason there's so many people pushing to get these projects is the interest rate also.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them are feeling the hot breath of higher interest rates on the back of their head, and they're going, wow, if we can afford it now, we better do it now.
Looking at September for the next anticipated rate hike, although the latest from the Fed
Scuttlebutt.
was they're backing off until maybe the
Oh,
spring.
oh, good. I
Yeah,
hope, yeah.
But she wrote her tone a little bit differently than anticipated, and they're thinking maybe they'll.
I
wait
didn't
for the
see
rest of the
that.
year.
I haven't heard her latest quotes, so good. I'm glad, because.
Well, the other thing I'll mention on Sedgwick, moving forward on a roundabout at Bravo Terrace. We did meet with the developer of number 33, and he's been talking to the owners there about possibly moving that project forward. And we had Scott put together a concept corridor plan in AutoCAD and looking at all the projects that we've met with people on and trying to figure out where the best location for intersections would be. We've vetted it through WashDOT, and they seem to be on board with the approach that we're taking. And so we're going to have Victor build that into our transportation plan model, and then adopt that as a basic corridor plan of this is where the access is going to be allowed as a full movement, and this is where it's only going to be a right in, right out. And I think that'll really help give the owners along Sedgwick some certainty on what they're going to be required to do and where the access is going to come from as they start planning other developments. Because historically we've had a lot of meetings along Sedgwick. At one time there was a talk of a Target and a Winco, and it sounds like Target may still be interested in Port Orchard at some point, but they're not actively talking. But I think that there's people who have contacts who may be.
Where on Sedgwick are they thinking of going?
On the south side, top of the hill. At least that's where they were talking about going. I don't know whether that's the same now based on traffic patterns and
This was which, Kmart?
Target.
Oh.
But that was in 2007 that they were talking.
On
But
top of the hill when you get up to the
Yeah.
top? Okay.
Yeah, because access there is very challenging.
well, and that's why we did this corridor study, is to look at where would we put. We would only have 2 roundabouts between 16 and Bethel, and we wanted to put those at the most appropriate place. And Geiger is not good because of sight lines, and then there's also already the left turn lane at the gym, and so that can be accommodated as a left in with a turn lane right as you're approaching Bethel. But we would put between Geiger and Ramsey, we would have a mid block roundabout where if you come out of Geiger and you want to
Turn left.
turn left, you're going to actually go right, go down through the roundabout, and then left. And so you'll use the roundabouts to make U-turns essentially as you go through the corridor. But that'll
And then where this development, that comes off on Geiger, doesn't it?
which one?
The,
33?
the,
33 actually comes out at Bravo Terrace.
it goes down?
That's at the bottom of the hill. The hill slopes down to the highway, and so it's between the highway and the slope is most of that development. So, and it may tie in up to Geiger eventually in the future if something develops up on the hill, but at this point they're proposing only to come out on Bravo Terrace.
And what are they proposing putting in down there?
Housing?
400 apartments.
More apartments.
You know, I'm remembering at the planning commission, I thought that was on the top of the hill, that it was zoned for apartments. That's where I expected to see those apartments.
Maybe is on the hillside some, but it's mostly at the bottom of the hill. There's a couple of wetlands down there that would be used as like central water features in the development, and they would be building around those constraints.
I just remember when we annexed it in, the zoning that the county had given it, and I remember, and at the time, the discussion is that there's going to be apartments there, that's what that, and I was thinking that it was, that they would access Geiger. I didn't realize they were going down.
Yeah.
Bravo access is already kind of challenging if you're making a left to get onto 16.
Well, and Bravo's
Oh,
going to
Bravo's
be moved.
awful.
Okay, yeah.
That's why it's going to be a roundabout, is because
Yeah.
that'll make the left turn movement much.
Oh, yeah, that's,
Much easier.
that's
You're
all.
gonna add another lane each direction?
It'll be designed to be widened, but it only has to be widened if the project warrants extra
Oh,
lane
I
capacity.
see. Down where the cul-de-sac of
So, and actually,
Bravo is, all that green area is going to be cleared. All this
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So actually that's what we're going to be talking about on the tip that we're bringing forward to work study, is that, up to this point we've decided to leave Sedgwick off, but there's so much interest in developing here that we need to at least have plans for the roundabouts to go in, so that if somebody wants to build here, they can contribute to the roundabout that's required for their project without building it until it's fully warranted. And then and roundabouts are going to require right-of-way take, and so if anybody is able to donate roundabout, they'll get a credit. They can apply for a credit for their donation of right-of-way towards their impact fee, which will give us the land that we need to build this in the future. And then whenever a project large enough comes along, or whenever the city wants to allocate impact fees to build those roundabouts, we can at least get the roundabout in on the existing road
Yeah.
without necessarily adding capacity.
And we would build around, I thought that was a state highway.
It is a state highway, but the state has no interest in,
Single
their interest is maintaining the existing level of service through the corridor. If we keep adding to it, they're going to tell us that we have to require our developers to do this, but it's easier to have our developers pay the fee and for us to do it than for any one of them to go alone and build these things. So that's what we need to talk about. And then the other thing we're going to talk about that was totally left off the other tip is Sedgwick from 16 to Sydney isn't on the tip anywhere.
Right.
We need to
And,
get that on there.
and that is going to probably hit a failing level of service soon. And by not having it in your impact fee, we're going to have to deny permit applications for concurrency because there's no
What about,
capacity.
what about Sedgwick from Bethel to Sydney?
So we're going to put the roundabouts in there, but the lane capacity is not going to be part of the impact fee because that's probably a $20 million project, and that's going to take the impact fee from 26 back up to 4,000 where it was before.
Or it was before. But I mean, when you said, when the capacity fails between 16 and Bethel up
Yeah.
For
Sedgwick,
Sydney.
isn't it also failing the other way to the west?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the freeway on-ramp is taking some of that.
Yeah.
But I agree, between the freeway, basic, or however where you want to divide it, McDonald's,
Yeah.
freeway, whatever,
Right.
to Sydney, that's gotta get fixed.
And
Yeah,
when you
and
look, when you look at your 31 here,
Mhm.
that's only going to exasperate
Oh,
those
yeah.
problems.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing about that is they have a vested project. They have a development agreement that allowed them to build this over 30 years or however long the development agreement goes. But we never had a concurrency ordinance in place, and so they had, what their status is as to whether, they had specific mitigation identified in their approval, but most of the projects that are being built right now probably aren't counting these trips in their traffic studies and saying, oh, well, McCormick is actually in front of line for us, and so we've got to do things above and beyond what future houses are going to be built here. And so right now, when we get a traffic report in, because we don't have the concurrency ordinance, we don't evaluate these trips in the models that are submitted, and so the mitigation might be much higher for projects in certain parts of the city because of these 4,000 houses. So that's a major problem, and that's a major reason why we need the concurrency ordinance to be fixed. And then we need to start tracking, because what's supposed to happen with a concurrency ordinance is that somebody, before their application even moves forward to the hearing examiner for review, they have to apply for a certificate of concurrency. Once they have that, we have basically assigned a certain percentage of trips within the city to that development, and then we have in our records that we publish a report every year that shows how many concurrency certificates are out there. Then traffic engineers can look at the list of concurrency certificates and say, okay, I have to factor all of these developments that have a certificate into my analysis of this next project that's going to be applying for a concurrency certificate. And right now, we just don't do that. And it's required by state law.
Right, right. And that would have eliminated a lot of the problems that we have up in the Flower Meadows area. Because all of those little developments went in small without any, and independently, they had no traffic impact, but collectively, they had significant impact.
Yeah. So anyway, so there's the roundabouts that'll be added to the tip, and then included in the tip already was actually money for the design of that corridor without actually construction. But that would mean that at least people are paying for the design so that we can come up with a construction estimate and realize what right-of-way we need as development occurs. But now we're proposing to add the design of Sedgwick from Sydney to 16 as well. And that would allow us to figure out culverts for Blackjack Creek, right-of-way needs, and at least get some of the revenue rolling so that we can come up with a plan for the whole corridor.
So that amphitheater property is developed, is that part of this 20-something, or is
Amphitheater
it the other
property.
side?
Howling Wolf?
When you come over the freeway, on the right-hand side, there's a little amphitheater, it's all meadow right back there.
Across from
Before you get to the
Albertsons.
gas station,
Okay.
across from Seebeck Pizza.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that slated to be developed with this 32? Or is it around when you get to Sydney?
No, that's not on Sedgwick. That's the Kruger
Okay.
project.
So Kruger isn't touching that.
It's
It
north
does not-
of-
it does
that's
not
north of
abut
the area
Sedgwick.
you're thinking of.
So my only thought, because we know where Seebeck Pizza is and we know where Albertsons is, it's unlikely we're gonna get any more room that direction, that if we need to get another lane of travel, it's gonna have to be on the wetland side or the amphitheater side.
The north side.
So if whatever looks to go in there before we have.
Yeah, we need a plan for
construction
right of way.
built, we need to
Right.
have
Yeah,
setbacks,
no.
because I don't wanna run into a situation where, and I don't know, cause I haven't seen the drawings, but I heard that the China Sun Buffet on Bethel literally went up to the current setback, and it's gonna pose a problem when Bethel needs to get widened, because you don't have the room. That's just something I want us to be
Oh, no,
aware of,
exactly.
that when we get these new developments on roads we know are going to need to be widened in the next 10 to 15 years, we have enough of a setback that we don't have to deviate
Yeah.
all over the place.
So our
build.
traffic plan that we're working on right now with Victor is going to identify what roads, so we have all of our road standard drawings that show a right-of-way width, sidewalk widths, landscaping, travel lanes, medians. In that plan, he's going to assign a standard to every road of what it is and what it's going to be if it's supposed to be improved. And that'll at least tell us how much right-of-way we need for each road section. If there are unique challenges like slopes or other things that we need slope easements, we may need more than that, and that's harder to plan for, but at least we'll have a basis in our plan for requiring dedications of right-of-way at the time that people apply. And I think, for instance, at Les Schwab on Sedgwick, where they're going to be building a Les Schwab across from Fred Meyer, which actually that's not on here either. But that application is under review right now, the SDAP. But anyway, they're dedicating right of way so that
Southwest
Sedgwick
corner?
can be widened.
Are
I
they
think
gonna
they're getting,
vacate their downtown facility?
I believe so, yeah.
Southwest or northeast corner?
It's on the north side of Sedgwick.
North.
Oh, okay.
Northeast. Okay, yeah, it used to be called Sedgwick Square, and when they found
Number
Les
20?
Schwab to be a tenant, they reconfigured it.
It might be
What's what number is that?
17 or-
17.
17. Oh, okay, that side.
Okay.
Next to the DOL.
So that permit is pending, and I would guess, I think they're just waiting for the Department of Ecology to sign off on their stormwater permit, and once
I
they,
think we're still waiting to get a
They're putting a
revised
car lot in
landscape
there?
plan. It's
No, it's not
Les
Les
Schwab.
tires.
Oh, tires, okay, okay.
Just a second, I'm
You
I'm
walk
having
to
trouble
Jared.
finding. No, I realize that, I'm
Oh, they're
having
moving
trouble
off of Main
picturing.
Street. Okay, okay.
It says the,
This is Fred Meyer.
it says
Okay.
Fred Meyer.
Across the road.
Okay, got
There's
it.
the ortho place right
Yeah.
here.
Right,
Makes
okay,
sense.
got it,
Vacant,
got
okay.
it, got
Yeah.
it, got it.
It's
Got it.
grassy, there are a couple of trees.
So when you look at this map, and then we'll adjourn, because we're just talking. But when you look at that, going down Sedgwick,
You mean going west?
I'm going
Southwest?
east.
Oh, going east.
going east, out into our UGA,
Oh.
there is actually property out there for commercial development.
East
In
of
the
Fred
UGA.
Meyer?
Mm-hmm.
I know there is, at the corner of Jackson, I think there's just the intersection, the four corners are commercial, aren't they?
Yeah.
Jackson, Sedgwick.
Yeah.
I don't think
there's-
there's significant property. I think there's a
Okay.
handful of little,
A small,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, by
But-
the church, that corner?
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think what the transportation plan is gonna come back with is that Sedgwick from Bethel to the UGA boundary probably needs to be widened with at least a turn lane and then sidewalk and pedestrian improvements and potentially additional lanes. But, the model will tell us what that need is. Anyway, I guess if we're about done, just to tie up the report that I gave to the Finance Committee, my solution to this right now, at least, and I've talked to the mayor a little bit, but the goal is to increase the intern's hours at least through the end of the year because he's graduating, and take advantage of his work on the comprehensive plan and make sure that we get that project done. And he can help out with some minor things here and there as assigned. But that'll at least give the planners some relief so that they can hopefully get caught up. But I think in the budget process, we need to have a serious discussion about, what the level of service that we want to provide is. And then the other challenge, and I know we've mentioned this before, but we're running out of space in the office. I think we have room. Scott's sitting in really the only last office space that's available, and it's not a very comfortable space. It's smaller than the other cubicles, but it's got a window, but then it leaks in the rain. And then the other space that would be available Vince would have to walk through to get to the servers in order to use. So we've got basically one space that's a bad space and no more room for staff beyond what we've got right now, unless we partition Mark's office into two or my office into two. So that's the major challenge is, you know, where are we
Why
gonna
don't we
put?
put you and Mark in the same office?
Yeah, whose side is he on, huh?
the open office area, but
Yeah, we're,
So I think that's something that, you know, council really needs, maybe when you do your workshop this summer on setting goals or, you know, some sort of plan has to be developed for space, I think, to maintain you know, the recession obviously lessened the impact of the annexations that we had, but now that we're being asked to provide the services that we are for the areas that were annexed, we don't have the space, right?
right, Alan and I have talked, you know, we're keenly aware of the fact that the police department's compressed into a smaller and smaller area, even though, you know, as we add to that. So we've looked at different things, and of course our loans paid off in 2019 for this building. You know, it'll be free and clear, and at that point, or even before, I would say before, a year or two before, we should be looking at different options. And one of them, this building has already been designed with the second addition.
in the parking lot.
Right, over the parking lot. And with a sally port and more room for the police. And so that probably maybe would solve our overcrowding problem into the next 20 years. But it would, of course, take a commitment on the council to say, all right, we're paying our mortgage off, perhaps we need to see what, and that's why I recommend that we'll get involved in this in probably a year or less, talking about it, because if we decide to do that, we'll get all the groundwork done ahead of time and figure out what this addition might cost and what it might look like.
I think it's a two-step process. The first is feasibility study and looking at your options and hiring a consultant to evaluate the alternatives and to provide you with, you know, cost benefits,
Use
pros,
this one.
cons.
This could be an office.
It's pretty crammed full.
Well, you
right
take
now.
all the stuff out of it. It says
And where does
window.
that stuff go?
But anyway, I think
Well, we could find room. In
you
an
need to do a
emergency, we
feasibility
could.
study of, you know, either moving the police, expanding the building, moving the court, any number of those things, or leasing space elsewhere for one of the departments, or building space elsewhere, and figure out what the relative costs of each of those are going to be and what the barriers and whatnot are. And then once you've done the feasibility study, then you need to hire somebody to do the design so that in 2019 you're ready to bid the thing. I think it's a 2 to 3 year process to lay that out, and so that means 2016 is the year you really need to start that.
Yeah.
But when I look at the building, I see a lot of space that can be used on a temporary basis. It would not be a permanent solution at all. But just look at the Carolyn Powers room. How often is that used? And you could make, you know,
Well, I mean,
couple of.
we had a conference room in the Public Works and Planning Department that's now in office, and so that's, you know, we've got, I guess, two
Right.
meeting rooms essentially.
Yes, we could. And I agree with you. We can even use that if we have to. I mean, it's not
I like
ideal.
that office.
It's not ideal, but we can move everything to either our,
Yeah.
Gotta find an
some other
employee
building.
that isn't prone to sleeping.
Yeah. But I mean, temporarily, but we do need to look at an overall plan for the future, because we're not gonna get any smaller here in Old Orchard. We're gonna eventually outgrow.
You could put a mobile in the parking lot temporarily.
Well, I mean, I'm really practical, and because the addition's already designed, drawn up and everything, you know, I need that to get to you guys too, so you can compare that to costs of buying someplace somewhere else, or you know. But yes, we definitely have growing pains a little bit. But we're awfully lucky to have this beautiful building to work with. Some people have growing pains, and they have an old ugly building that, you know, so.
Okay, well, thank you all for attending today, and we'll close the meeting.
Is upstairs usable at all? Good.
There's where?
Upstairs.
I've never been up there.
That's archives.
Yeah, that's the archive area.
It's big though. You've seen it.
It's big.